and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup, and I don't know if you can see it, but I was thinking about what to wear for Thanksgiving, and I found, of course, my shirt from the Wild Turkey Golf Course. That will be the last moment of levity in this show.
Right, because it's been an extremely serious week. We're here to talk about the, well, hold on one second. I'm just printing out the headlines. Starting with, of course, the story that you've been seeing all week, but that if you watch this show, you would know a lot more about, the massacre at the LGBTQ bar in Colorado Springs. We're going to talk about how it was fueled by the scapegoating of drag queens and transgender people by the political right wing. We'll tell you about the horror, the heroism, and how you can help those who survived and were victims.
I have to say that the question on TV that has made me the most crazy this week is a reporter saying, well, we don't know the motive yet. Please. Meanwhile, gay men in New York City and elsewhere are on alert for criminals working out of gay bars, drugging, robbing, and killing those gay men.
Very serious. Be on your guard. This might have been the top story of the week. The Respect for Marriage Act, overturning DOMA, moved in the U.S. Senate with a final vote set for November 28th.
Exactly. Nancy Pelosi is making way for new leadership in the House. We will pay tribute to her pioneering support on AIDS and LGBTQ rights.
Virginia's MAGA governor, Glenn Youngkin, is working to erase LGBTQ and Black people from history.
Which is exactly what provokes these massacres. But good news from Florida, where a federal judge has blocked part of Florida's anti-LGBTQ racist Stop Woke Act.
In better news, or happier news, Amy Schneider stood up this week for her trans brothers and sisters in Ohio and won the Jeopardy Tournament of Champions.
I think you blew the reveal. We'll talk about the passing of a Pulitzer Prize-winning gay composer and diarist, a gay country music pioneer, and a pioneering sex worker activist, among others, lost this week.
The uproar over the World Cup in Qatar for its human rights abuses has really intensified.
Really has, and that's getting reported a little better. And we have a very amusing story of gender nonconformity. Is that what we're calling it? Gender nonconformity? I might go a little farther than that. In the British royal family.
And that's the last time we're going to smile. Because this waking up on Sunday to this mass shooting and having to absorb all this at what happened at the Q Bar, 5 dead, 19 wounded on late Saturday night. Guy with an AR-15, Anderson Lee Aldridge, 22, entered the bar, starts shooting within a couple of minutes, does all that damage, and was subdued by 3 brave patrons. He was arrested. This is, of course, again, to repeat what you probably know, arrested last year for wanting to bomb his mother and didn't end up getting any charges, end up under the red flag laws, which are very hard to enforce in Colorado Springs, by the way.
Yes, there is a state red flag law and red flag laws are about if someone appears to be a danger to themselves or society and has weapons, those weapons can be taken away from them if someone steps up and reveals them. But Colorado Springs Police Department specifically said, we don't want that law. We don't want to take guns away from people. We are not going to enforce that law here in El Paso County, which is what Colorado Springs is. And so when Aldrich made these threats against his mother, first of all, his mother didn't want to press charges. And so since there were no charges, and since the police there don't want to pursue that anyway, they did not take his guns away from him.
So it's no coincidence that the club was one of many planning a drag brunch on, had a drag show there that night, planning a drag brunch on Sunday. This is what is being targeted by the radical right. Anything to do with drag, they put it on the internet, and the libs of TikTok or all these groups, and they say, go there. And the Proud Boys go there with guns. We've been reporting on this for months and months and months. We kept saying there's going to be violence. The clubs were appealing to the FBI, get involved, try to find out what's really going on with all these groups. Again, people have a First Amendment right to demonstrate against them if they want to, and in some states with guns, but find out what's going on.
So here's my concern about the reporting around this, which I find is tiptoeing around these issues specifically. It turns out that Aldrich has a grandfather who's a politician in Southern California, currently a member of the Assembly, although he's lost his current race, formerly a mayor in Santee, California. And he is a right-wing hysteric who supports the insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th and who is full of right-wing extremist rhetoric. And his daughter is Aldrich's mother. Aldrich is his grandson. And his mother is also a right-wing extremist who indulges in this kind of rhetoric. And Aldrich himself, at 22, as we just said, threatened his mother, is known to have mental disturbance problems, and undoubtedly, and here's where I'll make the leap, saw this advertisement of the drag brunch and the drag show at the Club Q and armed himself up. He certainly went in prepared. He was wearing body armor. He had an AR-15. He had a pistol. He had extra ammo. And he went in there very deliberately to stage this attack. And the fact that the news media is not putting all these elements together is extremely disturbing.
And again, look, this flash, of course, everybody probably flashed back to the Orlando Pulse massacre, which was also done with an AR-15. I remember the West Street massacre in New York in 1980, but they didn't have automatic weapons then. It was just a regular gun, and he killed 2 people. The guy who assaulted a bunch of gay bars back then, 42 years ago. But let's go back to the bar for the first early witness statement from Joshua Thurman, who was there celebrating his birthday and spoke the morning after about what he witnessed in the bar.
I heard shots. I heard 4 to 5 shots ring out. I thought it was the music. There was either the music was so loud that we couldn't hear anybody scream for help, or we just didn't hear anybody scream for help. So I thought it was the music, so I kept on enjoying myself. And then I heard another set of shots ring out, and I turned to my left, and I saw the flash from the muzzle. And when I saw that, I ran to the dressing room where the drag queens change and get ready for their performances. And there was, including me, there were 2 other people in there. I made them lock the doors. We closed and locked the doors. We got down on the ground, and we cut off all the lights. We heard everything. We heard a third round of shots. We heard the assailant be detained by, I assume, employees of Club Q. We heard the police come in. We heard yelling. We heard the police yelling, "Get your hands on your back." We heard everything. Shaking, crying, fearing for our lives. I'm thinking, like, at any second, this man could just bust through the door and kill us if he really wanted to. Thank God he didn't really know where he was going. The police didn't even know we were in the dressing room. One of the young ladies heard commotion with the police and her father, and she started panicking. So I crawled out of the dressing room, literally on my stomach, and saw the police, and they didn't even know we were in there. And once they found us, we were escorted out. When we were escorted out, bodies on the ground, blood, shattered glass, people dead. It was sad.
5 dead, 18 wounded, just a horror show. And one of the heartwarming things about it is the variety of people who were in the club. That shows some advance in our status and society. The guy who famously took them down was an ex-Marine who had
combat veteran, yeah.
Yeah, and who
Richard Fierro, 45 years old, there with his wife and daughter, and the daughter's boyfriend who died, who was killed in the attack.
One of the 5. But let's hear what Richard had to say about his experience taking him down.
I saw the ACU pattern black vest, and for me that was like, there's a handle, I'm getting it. So I ran across the room, grabbed the handle, pulled him down, and then started to actually I think I went for his gun with him. His rifle flew in front of him, and the young man that tried to jump in there with me, we both either pulled him down or whatever, but he ended up at his head and right next to the AR. And then with the AR, I told him, push the AR, get the AR away from him. The kid pushed the AR. I don't know what his name was. And then I proceeded to take his other weapon, the pistol, and then just start hitting him where I could. I lost my kid's boyfriend. I tried to have everybody in there. I still feel bad that there's 5 people there's 5 people that didn't go home. And this guy, I told him while I was eating, I said, I'm gonna kill you, man, because you tried to kill me. One of the performers was walking by when the kid was getting tired of kicking, and she helped and kicked him with the high heels that she had on. I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy that wanted to protect his kids and his wife, and I still didn't get to protect my boyfriend.
So there were 3 heroes there who just rushed in to stop it. It's being contrasted, with what happened in Uvalde with like 100 cops outside who wouldn't even go in to save those children. These people just jumped into action and did what had to be done to stop it.
And the cops responded immediately to 911 calls too, and went charging into the club. They didn't hesitate, but Richie had already subdued the gunman.
Richard was handcuffed by the police and put in a car for an hour. He begging to go see his wife, but they weren't sure who was the perpetrator, who was this. They didn't know. And so what he has been through, and he's been through Iraq and Afghanistan. But he said, look, I chose to go there. And nobody who went to that bar chose combat.
Just as a reminder, at Pulse in 2016, 49 dead, 58 wounded. Because of Richie, it was 5 dead and 18 wounded here. Each one of them a tragedy, but a little better. Let's show you the people who were killed. And again, the Colorado Springs police, while not fans of the red flag law, got up at the press conference, said, we're going to identify each of these people by their chosen name and their pronouns.
That was wonderful.
Yeah.
That was wonderful. So these are the 2 bartenders. There on the left, trans man Daniel Aston, 25 years old. And on the right, Derek Rump, 39. They were the bartenders. Daniel's parents said he knew he was transgender when he was 4 years old. And his mother worried about him because trans people are such targets now.
And Derek, wait a second. Derek was known as a total sweetheart, would buy people food who needed it, helped everybody and was considered the real soul of that establishment.
Absolutely. Aston's partner was a drag performer at the club. And of course, Aston he also led the LGBTQ student group at Northeastern University.
Now,
next was
Kelly Loving, a trans woman, 40 years old, also, beloved in the community. This was a loving, friendly family community and full of all sorts of people. And really, the whole bar operated as a family together. This was not some, dive. It was a really wonderful home for so many people.
And then Raymond Green Vance, also 22 years old, was visiting the club for the first time with his longtime girlfriend, who was the daughter of Richie Fierro, and ended up dead as a result.
And finally, Ashley Paw, also straight, and a friend of someone who was performing at the club. So we have trans people, straight people, Derek Rump, a gay man. That was indicative of the population who hung out at the club. And this tragedy, this horror appears in the middle of this. Now, here are some really ugly things. There was a woman who was in the club, a young woman who identifies as non-binary. She was standing out on the street just after this occurred, and she called her mother to, get support for this. And her mother says to her, if you hadn't chosen this lifestyle, you might not be in danger. You're going to hell for who you are. Also, right-wing social media, including the libs of TikTok, and commentators on the right wing are celebrating it. This is what needs to happen. We need to go kill LGBTQ plus people.
And the people who are signaling this has to be said, the Republican Party. I mean, they spent, Republicans, $50 million on campaign ads. We've said it before. Ron DeSantis, Marco Rubio, Carrie Lake, targeting transgender and people and drag queens in their ads to get votes. They did this. This was constantly on the air.
Endlessly, and they haven't stopped. It used to be that they'd take at least a pause after something like this and, express their thoughts and prayers.
One of the Republicans on CNN, he's trying to be moderate. He says it's a horrible, horrible situation, but you can't. They're not. But our people aren't calling for violence. They're fomenting violence.
Absolutely,
they're dehumanizing people.
You've heard us report about Proud Boys showing up at libraries, at drag shows, Oath Keepers, all of these people with weapons and threatening and intimidating.
And where is the condemnation from mainstream religious leaders, especially you religions that teach that we're disordered or sinful, saying, of course, you shouldn't be saying that. It's disgusting. But where is the clear message that violence has to stop? It doesn't happen.
Yes, and then today we have Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State and putative presidential candidate, identifying Randi Weingarten, out lesbian, head of the teachers union, as the worst danger to the world.
More so, he said, than Kim Jong-un and Putin or anybody else, the teachers union. And believe me, that is, when they go after all these education issues, they want to destroy public education. That's their goal. That's so we can all have Christian schools.
More on that coming up. But his point was that teachers are groomers and teaching filth in the schools, and therefore the head of the teachers union, who happens to be an out lesbian, is the most dangerous person in the world. Yeah. You don't think Randi Weingarten is going to need protection now? She is.
Well, there is something called the Colorado Healing Fund out of coloradogives.org for victims of mass violence, which is addressing this. And there are a bunch of verified GoFundMe campaigns for survivors and the families of the fallen. And we will link to that in our email. To sign up for our email, go to gayusatv.org. And I want to just say at the end of this segment, Governor Phil Murphy this week of New Jersey, he announced that name changes in the state will be kept confidential from now on to help protect transgender residents because the right-wing targeting of them has so intensified.
And ratcheting this down to the local level, we have what's happened in New York in this last week. There's a gay bar in New York called Verse, which I think is short for versatile. And that's what I read on their website. And it has been attacked 3 or 4 times in the last week.
4 times, probably by the same guy. And here he is throwing a brick in the window yet again. Now he runs off to the side, but he doesn't leave, and he comes back. And then when the owner comes out, he points down the block like, oh, it's somebody else, and not, oh, look. And so this guy, we've got a picture. We've got a picture. Now the glass is shatterproof. This is a better picture of the guy. He must be found and apprehended.
Shocking that he hasn't been so far. I assume he will be shortly, but did he just think this up himself, or is he influenced by all this right-wing news and social media condemnations?
And the other story that was going to be we talked about it last week, but there are more developments. Police and the DA are intensifying their investigation about a pattern of drugging of gay men in gay bars. 2 at least have ended up dead. Now we need to look at all those people who were classified with overdoses and see if they might have been the victims of this drug stuff. But another survivor came forward, a guy named Edward. We have a picture of him. He said, "This happened to me twice." He survived it both times. He ended up with a gash on his leg at one time. His apartment was ransacked. So what can I say, except you really have to mind your drink, that nobody puts it. Don't let anybody buy you a drink, that you don't know, very, very well. Our council member, Eric Botcher, has been speaking up about this. And they've got to get the tapes from all these bars and try to identify the perpetrators.
Yeah, I'm just looking down my list of other stories involving violence. Oh, the Boston Children's Hospital has again been threatened with a violent attack. That's the 3rd time people are going after them. 3rd bomb threat for their supposed trans youth care. And again, all lies, all lying about surgeries for minors. Surgeries for minors are not happening. And yet the right wing spreads these lies, and then you have the guy going into the pizza parlor with an AR-15 to rescue those children who've been kidnapped.
Leave the children's hospital alone. They're trying to save all those kids with the respiratory disease.
Yeah,
and transgender kids. All right.
That too.
Let's go into some election news or more.
We'll combine election news and violence. You remember we have shown the trans woman who was part of the insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th. Well, she has now made a statement because she's being prosecuted. And she says she was bullied in the military as a trans person and then brainwashed by Alex Jones. She got to listening to him. She went AWOL in the military because she was brainwashed. She was rejected by her parents, and thus she ended up with the Oath Keepers or Proud Boys attacking the Capitol, which she now regrets.
Okay. In election news, some more good news. In Arizona, in the Attorney General's race, out Democrat Chris Mays, M-A-Y-E-S, has won the race there over MAGA Abe Hamareda, an election denier. So that's progress.
One caveat, there will probably be an automatic recount in that race because the margin is only about 500 votes at this point. So she's expected to survive that, but it's not completely over yet.
But Democrats in Pennsylvania did win control of the House for the first time in 12 years. By the way, again, reiterating what happened in the U.S. Senate, and we do need that vote in Georgia to get the 51st senator. But the biggest win is that the president is going to be able to confirm his judicial nominees now. But they'll all be up against a radical right Supreme Court. And we have a bunch of decisions coming before hearings coming before the Supreme Court that are absolutely critical in December.
And we have on the court Justice Alito, who has just been revealed probably to have leaked information about decisions to his right-wing big donor friends, including the abortion decision, but also an earlier one. What was that earlier one? Oh, the Hobby Lobby decision.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I have no words.
Okay. Trump, of course, announced since we last, I think, spoke, he's still the favorite for the GOP nomination, but some notable evangelicals are turning on him. Robert Jeffress won't commit to him. James Robison told his Life Outreach International that Trump acted like a little elementary school child pushing petty issues. But that's always been true.
Exactly. So any one of these people is perfectly capable of changing course and supporting him if he seems to be headed for the nomination, because he still has a large cadre of supporters in the Republican Party. One interesting, cute thing is that out gay Representative David Cicilline from Rhode Island has actually filed an attempt to stop him from running by getting him declared responsible for the insurrection, which would evidently disqualify him as a candidate if he is convicted or maybe even charged with fomenting the insurrection.
They already did that to one elected official.
Yeah.
And, Nancy Pelosi announced that she's stepping down from leadership as Speaker at the end of the year. She was first elected when she was 47 years old from San Francisco, and within months, one of the few members of Congress to go to the 1987 March on Washington, where I spoke to her.
We're talking to Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi from California. How are you enjoying your first few months in Congress?
Absolutely great, and this is a great day too, the day of the march.
Why did you decide to come out here today? You seem to be one of the few members of Congress here.
Well, I have a strong contingent of San Franciscans here in Washington for it. I've marched in other gay, the AIDS Walk, the Gay Freedom Day Parade, and this is a logical thing for me to do. Well, we have a few specific pieces of legislation. The first day I became a member, I became a co-sponsor of the Gay Civil Rights Bill, Ted Weiss's bill, and we have a few pieces of legislation regarding AIDS, more money for AIDS, confidentiality, non-discrimination. And so we had a lobby day, and we presented 4 or 5 bills that we asked our friends to help us with to go to members of Congress and ask them to support those. They pertain to more money for AIDS and gay rights.
35 years ago.
And her first floor speech in 1987 was, "I'm here to fight AIDS," was what she said. Leading voice against DOMA in 1996. She called for marriage equality plank in the Democratic platform in 2012. I don't think we got it in 2012. Oversaw the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell in 2010, passed the James Byrd, Matthew Shepard Hate Crimes Prevention Act in the face of Trump transphobia, hung the trans flag outside her office, oversaw the passage of the Equality Act in the House, never passed the Senate. We never got our vote there, Chuck Schumer. And she appeared as a guest judge on RuPaul's Drag Race. But here she is at an AIDS hearing with Saint Elizabeth Taylor.
Quite a powerful duo, those two.
Yep.
I'm only sorry they weren't in charge of the world, because it could be a different place. But we did pass the Respect for Marriage Act, cloture on that last week in the Senate. And that's, 62 to 47? 37. Thank you.
We needed 60 votes to get it moving. We got 12 Republicans. Should we say who they are? I mean,
I don't care.
Oh, okay. But
we don't have time.
Okay.
Look it up.
12.
Yes.
The Mormon Church endorsed it, but Utah's Mike Lee did not. The Catholic bishops opposed it.
Surprise. Well, the Mormons supported the compromise non-discrimination bill in Utah a few years ago, too. They support this stuff as long as they can then lobby for a really broad religious protections. That's how they use their power.
They did get them in this.
Yeah.
All right. Going to the states.
And Schumer's, part of Schumer's aggression, of course, is that his lesbian daughter and her partner are due to have a baby in February. And what I didn't like was the statement about how reasonable and sincere people can have a difference of opinion about same-sex marriage. No, they can't.
All right. In Florida, a federal judge blocked a key piece of Ron DeSantis' Stop Woke Act, calling the policy restricting how lessons on race and gender can be taught positively dystopian and a violation of free speech rights and due process rights under the 14th Amendment.
Well, how can the government tell teachers what to teach?
This is telling university professors.
Yes.
He's an Obama appointee. He granted a temporary injunction with implications for pending university tender review. They're going to require, in order to get tenure, you got to go along with this thing or you're out. This is one of the things they wanted to do. And what the judge said is the law forbids disfavored viewpoints and allows unfettered expression of viewpoints that the state of Florida approves. That's fascism.
People misunderstand the First Amendment. What the First Amendment really says is that the government cannot legislate your speech, cannot forbid speech. And this is the most classic example of the government trying to do that. So hallelujah to the judge. And in Miami-Dade, the school board there had rejected a bunch of textbooks that had comprehensive sex education, but the parents rose up in protest and the books were restored to the curriculum.
But in Fort Lauderdale, all those right-wing groups, shades of Anita Bryant, are having a big rally, Moms for Liberty, et cetera, to protect the children. And, I just want to say, because they keep repeating these terms, what they're against: child grooming, gender ideology, one of the Pope's bugaboos, parental alienation, and gender-affirming care. This is their list. They think this is the most vulnerable, and they're going to have a rally for it on December 3rd. The massacre in Colorado Springs be damned.
And then that great moderate governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, who is a right-wing nut in sheep's clothing.
There he is with Carrie Lake campaigning with her.
Yeah,
she lost.
But he went to Arizona to campaign with her.
Yeah.
He is proposing statewide new standards for education that minimize race and erase LGBTQ people from curricula. It is a vicious, vicious attempt on his part to just make us disappear.
Speaking of vicious, Tennessee Republicans have pre-filed legislation to ban gender-affirming care for minors, as well as what they call prurient drag shows in public or private venues where minors could be present. Drag queens have been turned into the new witches or communists for the GOP. You have to wonder, if you go along with this, who will be next?
And then in just unsuspected news, there turns out to be a trans rugby player at Notre Dame, an out trans woman. There she is.
Well, she goes to school at Notre Dame, but she's part of a pro league now.
And she's
Emma
also
Farnan.
And studying aerospace engineering.
But we've got a wonderful video, which we'd love to show you now, but can't. And we're going to include it in our email. So sign up for that email.
Can't because we have no time.
Yes. The San Francisco was launching a pilot guaranteed income program for trans people. $1,200 a month for 55 people starting in January. 18 months, no strings attached. It's not a lot of money, but every little bit helps. There's another such program for artists affected by COVID. So to qualify, you got to be trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming, or intersex over 18, and an income of no more than $600 a month. You've got to be poor.
And our heroine, Amy Schneider, who had such a great successful run on Jeopardy, showed up in Ohio to testify to the state legislature against a bill that would bar medical care for trans youth. It's great to see her being politically involved. And
she got some modifications to the bill as a result. They didn't go all the way, but they did pull back a little bit.
Yeah. And then we turn on our TVs and Jeopardy is doing its Tournament of Champions and Amy Schneider pulled out the win.
Amazing. She's an amazing player. That was a very tough game, too.
It was. She should have won a day earlier, but she didn't bet enough in Final Jeopardy. But she came back the next day and with her steely resolve, went out there and just grabbed that final game and won.
She's the top of the heap.
She is.
All right. In New York City, at the hearing on designating Julius Bar a city landmark, there was unanimous support from those who testified. So that looks like it's going. It's the oldest gay bar. This is where the Sip-In was in 1966 that gave us the right to drink. And it's a place where lots of celebrity gays used to go, Tennessee Williams, Truman Capote, Rudolph Nureyev, Vladimir Horowitz, and others. And then the commission did vote to landmark the Lesbian Herstory Archives at its home since 1991 in Brooklyn, Park Slope. The archive was founded in 1974 by activists Joe Nessel and Deborah Edel and others. And they have materials going way back, most of it starting in the 1950s.
Started in Joan's apartment on the Upper West Side, and then finally a fundraising campaign acquired that building in Brooklyn 30 years ago. All right.
Surrealism in everyday life, Anne. Grindr went on the New York Stock Exchange. It got listed, and they rang the opening bell. They have over 260 million messages a day circulated on that. People spend an average of 61 minutes a day on the app, and it has 11 million active monthly users.
Yeah, well, the stock exchange and Grindr is definitely unexpected. All right, should we talk about some people we've lost this last week?
Yes.
First of all,
Patrick Haggerty was the out gay country music pioneer. He died at 78, suffering a stroke a month ago. He was inspired to come out after the Stonewall Rebellion and joined a chapter of the Gay Liberation Front in Seattle. And in 1972, created a band called Lavender Country and recorded an album of songs about gay activism and love. Sold 1,000 copies, but it kind of, had to go do other things, radical things. And eventually, one of his boyfriends, a guy who became his partner, discovered the album, brought it back, and upped his career in music as well.
He put out that album 50 years ago in 1973.
Country music.
And he had been, there are a lot of personal stories in country music. He also had been kicked out of the Peace Corps in 1966 for having gay sex.
And then our pal Ned Rorem has died at the age of 99. Pulitzer Prize-winning composer of art songs and librettos, and other award-winning diarist, chronicling his gay life before and after Stonewall, scandalizing many in the 1960s, but always candid and trenchant in his observations. He had intimate relationships with Jean Cocteau in Paris, Leonard Bernstein, Noel Coward, Samuel Barber, Virgil Thompson. His longtime partner was James Holmes, who died of AIDS, an organist who died in 1999. They were together for 32 years. On our show, after James died, he wanted to come on the show and beg for a new boyfriend, if you remember that. I
remember that he was a Gay USA viewer, which makes me very proud.
He was...
all right. And Carol Lee died at 71. She was known as Scarlet Harlot. She's the one who made up the term sex work, defining prostitution as sex work, and really putting a whole new twist on that employment, making it clear that people could choose sex work as a profession, as an honorable, consensual way to make a living. She was an activist, an author, and very famous for her activism and her visionary qualities.
Patrick Sherman has died at 79. He's a teacher. He was a teacher, but he was a member of the Gay Liberation Front, which was formed during the Stonewall Rebellion. And with Gay Activist Alliance after that, he was a founding member of the Gay Switchboard, which helped us all out and referred us. And he was active with the Gay Square Dance Club, the Times Squares, in recent years.
The Gay Switchboard was a vehicle for people to find resources, but the Yellow Pages would not list it because of the word gay. And
Michael Feingold, the longtime theater critic of the Village Voice from 1971 to 2013, an out gay man, a judge for the Obie Awards, the Off-Broadway Awards. He died at 77, twice winner of the George Jean Nathan Award for criticism, an elegant writer as a critic, but he also was a playwright and dramaturge and translator. And he brought an endless stream of LGBTQ theater to light in his career.
International news?
Yes.
Qatar. Qatar, whatever. So the World Cup has started, and at the last minute, FIFA, the international soccer football organization staging the World Cup, said, no, we're not going to fine people who wear rainbow armbands. We're going to give them a yellow card, which is a penalty. So any player wearing the rainbow armband would have started the game with a penalty, and if they got one more, they would be kicked out and banned for the next game too. So they tried to keep spectators with rainbows on. In one case, they apologized, but they're hypersensitive to it.
Look, this gay Qatari who is living outside, obviously, of Qatar, Dr. Nasser Mohammed, he lives in the U.S. now. He maintains contact with hundreds of gay Qataris, and he says, they are going to crack down so bad in anger at gays after this thing is over. The security forces, they arrest people, and then they want names of other gays. When they do that. It's a witch hunt, and that's what they never should have had these games there.
Never. And I'm happy to see that that's the story every day. I'm happy that the team from Iran refused to sing their national anthem in support of the women who are demonstrating in Iran after the death of the woman there who refused to wear the headdress.
That was extremely brave, and I'm glad that our Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, spoke out about all this censorship this week.
By the way, the FIFA president, as the games were starting, promised that LGBT people would be safe in Qatar, and his communications director came out as gay, but the reality is that the retaliation is going to be huge.
Look at the hatred that they've been stirring up. The cartoons that have been running in the press there. They show the symbol of the World Cup games smashing the rainbow, and there were many, many others like that.
And Peter Tatchell, longtime activist in London, did hold a demonstration there as the Cup was beginning to protest all this discrimination.
At the Qatar embassy there in London. Okay, moving on.
Australia, pro basketball player Isaac Humphries in Australia is the first major league basketball player to come out to his team, Melbourne United. There's video of it. Some have asked why were there cameras there while he was telling his team, but it's a pretty moving moment, and I think we're going to link to that in our show note.
We are definitely linking to it in our show note. In London, Kevin Spacey, who was beaten 3 accusations of sexual assault and harassment from men here, faces 7 new criminal charges from his time as artistic director of the Old Vic over there. He's going to stand trial for these counts.
If only he had been smart as a child and been open about his leanings, he would not have had to grow up to be a sexual abuser. So perhaps he can take the example of young Prince George, who his father, Prince William, said was totally smitten with the satin sequin jacket worn by this performance.
Craig
David. And you can see how happy Prince George was.
Prince George, you're going to listen. When you get the top job, you're going to be able to dress up quite a bit.
I was very amused. On
a much more serious note, we do know where Brittany Griner has been sent now, to a women's penal colony 300 miles outside of Moscow, small town of Yavas. For 2 weeks, Russian authorities would not provide information on her whereabouts. There's little access to medical care. Inmates work long hours there for no pay.
Oh, I think that's the least of their problems. Moving on to AIDS.
Right. Well, monkeypox, with cases in New York down to an average of 3 per day. They're
3 per week, I think.
Okay, but from more than 70 in July. Anyway, New York has stopped placing vaccine vans outside nightclubs and sex parties, but vaccines are still available in sexual health clinics. So we're coming up on World AIDS Day. We're 40 years into the pandemic, 35 million dead, another 35 million infected, treatments that keep the virus at bay if you can get them. But people forget how devastating AIDS was in the US in the 1980s. And Kansas City PBS took a look at that in a thing called AIDS in KC, a 30-minute documentary, and we're going to link to that. I watched the whole thing.
Me too.
It certainly brought back a lot of painful memories of how just abused and ignored we were. But there were people, of course, who pushed to the front lines like the real heroes and took care of each other, including a lot of lesbians.
I also think it was important to see the story from Kansas City rather than from New York or San Francisco. So, we highly recommend this. And if you subscribe to our weekly show note by going to gayusatv.org, send you one note a week, and with a lot of important links like that. Also, back to monkeypox for a moment. There was a new report out that women and non-binary people have been largely overlooked in the monkeypox epidemic and are not getting diagnosed or treated in the way they should be. So be careful. And if you're having symptoms, get diagnosed.
Okay. And entertainment news.
Well, actually, the big news of the week comes from, believe it or not, the Hallmark, Lifetime, and Great American Family Christmas movies. Because Candace Cameron Bure, who you may remember from The View or Full House or other things, went from the Hallmark channel to, these channels have stables of actors they put in movie after movie after movie. So she was contracted to Hallmark, but she left there, went to Great American Family, became the chief creative officer, and has now said that she's happy to be there because she's a Christian and they're Christians, and they can concentrate on Christmas movies dealing only with traditional families. And Hollywood collectively has lost its mind over this. And JoJo Siwa was the first to react. And the social media is going crazy over what a bigot Candace Cameron Bure is. And she's now complaining that she's the victim in this. And she really loves gay people. And how could people accuse her of being a bigot? But she believes in the traditional male-female family. And it's just gone crazy.
Well, there were people who went crazy when Superman's son came out in the comic books. But now we have the story about how John Kent, there on the left, has come out as gay to his father, Superman, Superman comes back, after a year fighting at some war world planet or something. And he says to his son, every day of my life has been better since you've been in it. Every single day. Who you love is the last thing I could care about.
Well, perhaps he could celebrate who his son is rather than not caring. But
wait a minute, I misread the quote. Every single day, who you love is the last thing that could change that, is what he said.
Okay.
I apologize.
Yeah, no, and I get it. I'm looking always for more respect than tolerance. But here's my question. How he's Superman's son. He's wearing the cape and the outfit. How could he be injured?
I'm not up to date on that, but I'm sure a viewer will tell us. And if you're seeing the show before Thanksgiving, the queer Big Apple Corps is going to be, which was part of a virtual parade a couple of years ago, they're going to be marching in the Macy's Day Thanksgiving Day parade.
I know you have a few
I do.
shows to talk about. So let me just run through these.
Sure.
We're Here, the great HBO show of Shangela, Eureka, and Bob the drag queen going to small towns around America, is coming back for its third season this Friday at 10 p.m. HBO. Really, really important, especially in light of the Colorado Springs shooting. And congratulations to Shangela, who made the finals of Dancing with the Stars, came in fourth. You go ahead. I have
a bunch of plays to recommend. These are going to be like 2-sentence reviews. The monologuist Mike Birbiglia is filling the Vivian Beaumont Theater at Lincoln Center with his dry wit and insight in The Old Man in the Pool. You got a picture of Mike there on the stage?
Yes.
He's pretty terrific. The next play is very important, Downstate, at Playwrights Horizon. It's the latest from Bruce Norris, who did Clyburn Park, which was so wonderful. He's given us a play that dares to humanize men on the sex offenses registry, a group that we consign to eternal punishment, and there is uniformly fine acting in that. Next is, on a lighter note, Kimberly Akimbo, a clever and smart musical about a teenager who looks 70 years old due to a disorder. That's Victoria Clark there on the left. But there's nothing wrong with Victoria Clark in the lead and her sunny supporting cast. Next, I had been looking forward to Bess Wall's Camp Siegfried at Second Stage, about a real Nazi youth camp on Long Island in 1938, told through the story of a boy and a girl there. But I felt the story was too small to contain the enormity of what went on there. And then Sandra is a one-woman show by David Kale, who gave us the wonderful Harry Clark with Billy Crudup at the Vineyard Theater, also back in 2017. This is Marion Neshrat giving a compelling and edgy performance about a very sexy mystery story that includes some gay themes and keeps you on the edge of your seat waiting to hear more.
I went to see the movie Tar, the Cate Blanchett movie.
Yes.
About the lesbian conductor.
I'm eager to hear what you have to say about it.
Horrible.
Oh, my God.
Awful. Please do not spend your money seeing Tar. I believe it's on Netflix now if you really must watch it. But it is terrible.
Because?
It's pretentious. It's muddy. It makes no sense. It has very little actual sexual contact. But
she plays a conductor
who goes crazy. And she is just obnoxious throughout. You hate her from the very first minute. And the movie makes very little sense and is just torture to sit through. Torture. Well, and it's 2.5 hours.
Well, I saw Lady Chatterley's Lover, the latest version, starring Emma Corrin. It's opening in theaters on November 23rd and on Netflix on December 2nd. And I can recommend that.
Oh, good. Something to look forward to.
And then
I have
Go ahead.
Correction from last week. And we were talking about the death of Kevin Conroy, who voiced animated Batman productions. And I made some reference to that being Marvel Comics. It is not, of course. I'm grateful that no one corrected me, but it's DC Comics and Warner's. So please, my apologies.
Brendan Fraser is getting award season buzz for his portrayal of a morbidly obese gay man in The Whale, based on a play by Samuel Hunter, which I saw. I thought, did you see it too? It was pretty good. Yes. But he has taken himself out of the Golden Globes. Why? Because he was groped by Hollywood Foreign Press former president Philip Burke in 2003, said the experience left him panicked and ill, and no action was taken against Burke, who later called the Black Lives Matter movement a racist hate movement in 2021, and was finally thrown out of that ridiculous group.
Yeah, problematic would be an understatement for the Golden Globes organization. I don't know if you watched it. I watched it last night. Boulevard, a Hollywood story about Gloria Swanson that is currently playing on Apple TV and iTunes. It's another Jeffrey Schwartz production, and he's the one who made the Tab Hunter Confidential and I Am Divine and the Vito biography and the fabulous Alan Carr. He does really nifty little movies that are biographical about Hollywood. I particularly love the Tab Hunter one. But this one's about Gloria Swanson and how she tried to turn Sunset Boulevard into a Broadway musical about 30 years before it actually was made into a Broadway musical.
With a couple of gay guys and falling in love with one of them.
Exactly. And they were and the one she fell in love with was very, very, very closeted and uncomfortable about a lot of things. So again, it's a 90-minute, cool little Hollywood biography of an unknown story. And it's called Boulevard, a Hollywood Story.
Well, so a hard week, and I'd like to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody, but it's been a very hard week, and we're all just trying to survive. We're also trying to survive here on Gay USA, keep it going, and you're the ones who keep us going. Mainly by watching, by communicating with us, by giving us some feedback. We've incorporated some of that into the show this week, like don't just talk about New York and California, which we don't think we do, but we're trying not to. We try to talk about all over the world. So if you can see your way to supporting us, go to gayusatv.org and you can make a tax-deductible contribution. And we would appreciate it, and we'll keep coming to you next year.
Yes, we would appreciate it. We do appreciate everyone who supports us in all those ways. And I just want to remind us, in light of the Colorado massacre, that I think we underestimate the extent to which we live on a daily basis under this cloud of hatred and violence. And we tend to discount it often. But we're survivors, and it's a tough road. And I really want to applaud all of you for getting through this and urge you not to underestimate your own courage in doing so.
And find the support that you need. Reach out to others and embrace your brothers and sisters. We need to not be so hard on each other sometimes.
Exactly. So thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next week.